In the 19th century, Antonin Carême was one of the best pastry chefs in the world. And obviously it was in France, but that just doesn't matter. And you know what he created? I know I always say everything we're doing is my favorite, but that is definitely one of my favorite desserts. We're making an éclair au chocolat. A chocolate lightning, if I could translate. But this one is definitely going to be an explosion in your mouth. Choux pastry, a delicious chocolatey pastry cream. I'm gonna add a croquant on top and a chocolate ganache. It's going to be very, very chocolatey, but not sweet. And so many textures, so many flavors. Two things remain to be done for us to get cooking and for you to subscribe. Alright, so our first step, we're gonna start working on the craquelin. I would say this step is optional. Basically, you're just gonna have that thing that covers the éclair that gives it some texture. It's also pretty. So, I mean, you can do it, but if you feel like it's too much, then definitely skip that step. So in the stainless steel bowl, I'm going to mix my butter with some cocoa powder, flour, and some brown sugar. And we're gonna mix that in together until it forms a dough, okay? So what you want to make sure is actually you're able to play it, able to work it without it breaking. Once you did so, you're going to take 2 pieces of parchment paper and we're going to actually take that bowl of dough. Try not to eat it because it's really delicious, and we're going to press it in between those 2 pieces of parchment, and you want to roll it. So you're going to roll it pretty thin, I would say about 5 millimeters. So if you ask me what's in inches, I'm going to tell you it's like pretty much paper thin. All right. Once it's rolled, we're gonna place that in the freezer for at least half hour and up to a couple days. All right, so now we're gonna start working on the chocolate pastry cream. That dessert is very chocolatey, so there's gonna be chocolate everywhere. So in a medium saucepan, I'm going to place my milk, and then I'm going to add my vanilla paste. You could add some extract or some vanilla pod if you have one. I'm sure you've seen this step on many of my videos, but basically we're going to infuse that milk and also get it warm so we can actually make the pastry cream. Meanwhile, in a stainless steel bowl, I'm going to add my flour as well as my cornstarch, some cocoa powder, and our sugar. Not a lot of sugar. We want to make sure that dessert is actually pretty balanced and not overly sweet. Once we have all of our ingredients together, I'm going to give that a bit of a whisk, make sure it's nice and smooth and combined. Once I'm happy with that, I'm then going to add the eggs, okay? We're gonna add 1 full egg and 1 yolk. And then we're gonna whisk that until the mix is again completely smooth, has come together. It's actually pasty, there's no lumps or anything. It's at this point that we're gonna be able to add the milk that is now nice and warm. It's gonna actually loosen the mix. Again, I've showed you how to make pastry cream before, so this should be no news to you. And if it is, maybe you should go subscribe so you can actually see what we do on the channel. All right, now that I have my milk, I'm gonna give that a nice whisk, and I'm gonna put that back into the pan that we just used. And we're gonna start thickening by actually bringing it back on the heat using a wooden spoon, a spatula, or a whisk. And you're going to actually mix it until you obtain the desired consistency, which should be a pretty thick paste, just like so. Okay, it's very important that it's not too runny, otherwise when you eat the eclair, it will be, running everywhere, and we don't want that, right? Okay, I'm super happy with this mix, so I'm gonna place it onto a flat dish because I want it to cool down as fast as possible. And you're going to cover it with another layer of plastic, make sure it's airtight so it doesn't create a skin. And I always said before, nobody wants like a skin on top of the pastry cream. It's not very pleasant. Once I did so, I make sure everything was airtight. I'm gonna place it in the fridge until fully cooled down, which is about an hour and a half. Okay, so now we have to work on the most important and probably the hardest part of the recipe. You need to really be sure to make it properly. So in a pot, I'm going to mix my water with the sugar, a pinch of salt, the milk, as well as the butter. Okay, so once we have all these ingredients together in the pot rather, we're going to place that on the stove and we're gonna bring it to a simmer. Basically, we just want it to melt, nothing else, nothing more. Once you've melted everything, you're gonna add the flour and the cocoa powder. You could actually mix them together first, but I wanted you to actually see what I was doing so it was nice and clear. At this point, this is where you have to work your muscles, okay? So elbow grease, and you're gonna wanna cook that for at least 4 to 5 minutes. Basically, you want it to dry. So you see that skin at the bottom of the pan? That's a good thing, because if there's too much moisture, it's not going to cook properly and rise. Once you cook the dough and you're happy it's nice and dry, you're gonna place it in the mixer, or you could do it by hand, but it would be, again, a lot of work. So in the mixer, I'm gonna place with the whisk attachment, and basically I just wanna cool down the dough before I can add my eggs. Once my dough is cooled down, I'm gonna switch from the whisk to the paddle attachment, and this is at the point we're gonna add the eggs, which I got from Small Spade Farms here in Ontario. Oops, do not drop the eggs, please. It's silly of me. Okay, once I'm done with the eggs, I'm gonna add them to the mix one by one, and you wanna make sure it's fully combined before you add the next one. Once you've did so, your mix is ready to go. We're gonna switch it from the mixer to the piping bag. Also added a star tip, so we're gonna have a nice design to the eclair. If you have a round tip, it also works just fine. Okay, so now we want to pipe them. So they're gonna be about 2 centimeters of width and about 14 centimeters of length. If you want to know what that is in inches, well, I think it's about 1 inch deep and I believe 6 or 7 long, okay? Once we pipe them all, we're gonna grab our craquelin from the freezer, and we're gonna pretty much cut up some rectangle that are matching the size of our eclair. So you can use a ruler so they are perfectly rectangle, or if you don't have a ruler, you can also just makeshift one, okay? Then we're gonna place them on top of our beautiful eclair and repeat the process until we are done. I will then place them in a 375 Fahrenheit oven for 5 minutes, and I will turn down the temperature to about 350 for 20 minutes. Do not open the oven while this is happening, okay? Now, while they're cooking, let's work on the ganache. So I'm gonna mix my chocolate. I'm using my own chocolate, 74% dark, and I'm gonna add some heavy cream to it as 35% cream. I'm gonna place that on top of a double boiler, and we're gonna tiny whisk it until it's fully combined and we have a beautiful ganache, nice and thick. I will then take it out of the heat, and I'm gonna keep on stirring until it's a little bit more chill, and I'm gonna get that nice shine on the chocolate. I will then transfer it into a small piping bag with a really tiny, like a little special tip that I have. You could also use a star tip if you don't have anything. Okay, I think it's about time for us to check on our eclair, and check this out. They are absolutely perfect, but we need to let them cool down before we can actually stuff them, right? About an hour. And to help with the cooling, I'm also gonna transfer them from my tray to my cooling rack, which will do a better job of heat escaping. Yes. Okay, now let's go back to the pastry cream. I like the thickness of it, okay? But if you want something a bit lighter, you could absolutely whip some cream and add some whipped cream to it. It's really gonna depend on your mix, depend on the temperature, depend on like the type of flour that you have, the cornstarch, so much things can happen. So just look at the mix. If it's thick enough for you, perfect. If it's too thick, then just add some whipped cream, okay? Once we did that, we're just gonna like squish all it to the bottom of the piping bag, give it a twist so we have lots of control. That's the special tip I was telling you about, because it's tiny, and also there's a star, so I'm gonna be able to pierce the bottom of the eclair, and I'm gonna stuff it from behind. That's the first method I want to show you, okay? So you're gonna do that little piercing, and then you're gonna do a little squeezing, and it's gonna fill up the eclair. The second technique, you're gonna actually split the eclair in half and make sure you don't break the top. Okay, then you're gonna take a larger piping tip. I'm using a star tip, and we're gonna simply do a little swirling around and pipe the chocolate right into the base of our eclair. And once you've stuffed them all, we're just gonna take the top and add it over it. Make sure you are super careful, because you don't want to break them. We work so hard, it'll be quite sad. At this point, one thing remains to be done is to actually add our beautiful ganache on top of our eclairs. So I'm gonna grab my piping bag, and I'm gonna simply pipe that chocolate ganache over top of the eclairs. Honestly, this is just for show. It's gonna add some decadence, but if you don't want to do that step, or you just want to put the ganache, it's too complicated, you can also skip that. It's just me being me. Well, look at this. They look incredible. I am super happy with them, and if you love chocolate, this dessert is absolutely for you. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. The recipe will be in the description below, as always. I will see you in the next episode, but first, I'm gonna have to try these, so let's do it. That's the best I ever had, period.